What is up everyone, my name is Jasper and in this video I wanted to talk about a few things that could actually mess up your website. We always talk about building websites and what you should do, but there are always a few things that could go wrong. Now in this video I'm going to be discussing a few things that could go wrong that you can actually control, as well as a few things that are out of your control that can actually be really hurtful for your websites. So let's just dive into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is not knowing how to get traffic. In the blogging world, traffic really is everything, and when you don't know how to get the traffic, you basically have nothing. Now luckily there are some very easy ways to learn how to get traffic. And that's by doing your research. Watch videos by other YouTubers. There are so many YouTubers out there that are openly sharing how they are building websites and how they are building their successful websites. People like Amelia Gardner, Carl Broadbent, Chris from Niche Safari, Income School. All these people have proven track records of building successful websites and they're kind enough to share it with all of us on YouTube. But there's also other bloggers out there that are sharing their tricks. People like Anne from yes.com, April from bloggersontherise.com or Jesse from Niche Informer. There are so many people out there that are just sharing their tricks and their secrets. And you can learn a lot from these people. So what I would recommend is to just immerse yourself in information. Learn how to get traffic, learn how to write good articles, learn how to set up your website. Go through all of that and eventually you will be at a point where you can build successful websites. Now I'm not saying that you should only do research, I also want you to start. So instead of learning just from watching other YouTubers do it and then doing it once yourself and giving up when it doesn't work, I would rather see you give it your own try as well. So aside from learning from others, learn from your own mistakes as well. Now the second thing that could have a huge impact on your website is your niche and choosing the wrong niche in particular. Now, choosing the wrong niche is not something that you do easily. In fact, I believe that almost every niche is worth a website. But not every niche is created equally. Some niches have extremely high RPMs, while others have really low RPMs. And some niches have massive search volume, while others have just a few thousand people a month. So really just use your common sense for this one. When you're writing about dogs, you just know that there are so many people looking up dogs. But when you're writing about a certain type of grass, for example, I'm just making something up, you just know that there won't be that many people looking it up. For me personally, I always like to see some sort of forum or online community about the topic. This could be a large Facebook group or a very large forum, but if there's some sort of activity and community around this topic on the internet already, I think it's large enough to justify creating a website about it. Now also keep in mind that some niches are very seasonal, so if you're writing about snowboarding, just know that your site will probably not see that many visitors during the summer, but once you're in the winter, you will see high numbers of traffic. Same goes the other way around. If you're writing about boating, just know that the summer is a much higher traffic numbers than the winter. And thirdly, the last thing that you can control is giving up too early. And giving up too early is probably the worst mistake and the worst thing you can do. Creating websites is a long-term game, as you need to get out of the Google sandbox with your site, and it can take a few months. So if you're giving up after, say, 3 months because you're not seeing anything happening, just know that you're giving up way too early. I really do believe that quitting too early is the reason why so many people are comfortable saying that only a few people will make it and only 1% of people will be successful. I just really believe that this is true, but it's only true because most people quit way before they are able to see success. People are very comfortable spending 4+ years in college for a degree, but when it comes to business and they don't see results in 2 or 3 months, they think it's impossible or it's not worth it. I just don't get it, and I think quitting too early is the worst thing you can do. Now for some things that you cannot control, and the first one is, it's very close to home for me, and that's Google Core Updates. Google releases several core updates around the year, and these are basically very large changes to the algorithm. And once these happen, the rankings are shuffled up a bit. And some people are winners, some people are losers here, and some people don't notice anything. Now, you ideally want to be in a group that doesn't notice anything or sees a huge uptick in traffic, but that doesn't always happen. My main beauty website has seen 6 core updates since I started it, I believe, or maybe 7. And although I didn't notice anything for most of them, there was one in December of 2020 that basically completely ruined my website. So whereas my website used to get about, well, say 200,000 page views every month, it now sits at a measly 40,000 page views a month, and that happened overnight. So there's a very steady graph from the start of the website till December, where it's just a very nice graph that you just want to see when you're starting a website. And then it goes boom, down. So I basically lost everything overnight, and that's the thing with core updates. They just happen and you can't really do anything about it. Now the one thing you can do is create the best possible content, which I believe I was doing at the time. It might not be the best, which is why I saw a huge decrease in traffic and rankings. But yeah, that's really the only thing you can do for a core update, and it's just create the best possible resource out there. So really all you can do is create the best possible content and just hope that Google also sees it as the best. So on to point number 5, which is your site crashing or being hacked. Now this section is basically going to be one big PSA for creating backups and the importance of creating backups. But luckily, crashes or your site being hacked don't happen that often, but when they do, they can be catastrophic, especially if you do not have a backup. So let's say you're messing around with something in the backend of your website and you mess something up and your site crashes and is completely down. And if you have no idea how to fix it, you really just need a backup to get your site back up and running again. Now just imagine that you have a 2-year-old website that you never backed up before. Let's just say that you're not in for a good time once you see that all of that work will now be gone. Now of course most hosting companies also make their own backups, so you can always contact them, but that isn't always the case, so it's always best to have your own backups as well. And let's just say that your last backup was 2 months ago. That means that you lost 2 months of work. So what I would personally recommend is to just make a backup every single day. This means that in the worst case scenario, you lose just 1 day of work, which is manageable. And the same goes for your site being hacked. And one very easy solution to this is that you create a very strong and secure password with 2-step verification. This is the most important part. Just make sure that it's a 2-step verification process so that a hacker cannot just simply guess the password and be in. Now this of course sounds very simple and diluted, and it's not a ironclad defense against everything, but it should make it at least a lot more difficult. Now on to the 6th point, which is your site being copied. This is something I had to deal with several times. I once had a fellow Project 24 member steal my content, and this guy was basically just spinning my content. It was very obvious because I was saying very specific things about very specific topics that I had personal experience with. I had a few personal stories, and all of those were incorporated in their articles. I have a hard time believing that my exact story when I was 14 years old in a very specific country, in a very specific store that isn't a worldwide brand, that they had the very same experience at the same age, in the same store, whatever, right? I have a very difficult time believing that. And the second time was even worse. There was just a person that was going through my articles and just running them through an AI that was swapping around some words. Now when this happens, the first step you should always take is to get proof, gather the evidence and make a neat little spreadsheet with all the screenshots and all your proof. This way, when you contact the person themselves, you have the proof there, so they can't really just go and change some things up to make it look less copied or less stolen. But after having all the proof gathered, what I always want to do is I first like to reach out to the person themselves. Let's see if we can handle this the easy way. So most of these sites don't have a contact form, but if they do, just shoot a message there. But if they don't have a contact form, which is the most obvious case, of course, you should go to a whois lookup. This is just Google whois and then type in the website. And this usually gives you a list of information. You can always see their hosting platform and sometimes even some personal information. And with this information, I want to contact the person itself first because I want to do this the easy way. But if they don't respond, which is usually the case, then you can always contact the host. Now the person from Project 24 who was copying me, I also sent him a message on the forum there and he just completely ignored it, which just speaks to how guilty he was. But after trying to reach out to the person themselves and being ignored, it's time to go the hard way. And this is by filing a DMCA complaint. So what you need to do is you go to the hosting platform and they usually have a section that's called DMCA or DMCA file. And you go to there and you fill in the form. Now this will be sent to the hosting company, and when they see adequate proof of the stealing and spinning, They will go to the website and take down either the whole website or the articles that were stolen. Now this is a bit difficult because you really need good proof, because the hosting platform is not just shutting down anything that's getting a DMCA filed against it. So really make sure you have a solid case here. For me personally, one website was taken down and the other one that was copied by the Project 24 user is still up and is even outranking me, even though they are using my words and my story. On the other hand, point number 7, you can also have a DMCA filed against you. And sometimes this can happen because you are accidentally spinning content or you're purposefully spinning content, in which case you deserve it, deal with it. But if you don't really spin any content and you're just getting a false DMCA filed against you, that can be really scary. We just went over what a DMCA can do and how it can take down articles or a complete website. So getting one of these filed falsely against you is really scary. Now what you need to do here is basically the same as once you're filing a DMCA complaint, and that's by gathering the evidence and just filing it. Show ironclad proof that this DMCA is untrue. Now this might sound easy, and luckily DMCAs are very strict, so they don't just take down everything that's getting filed, but you need to take this seriously because it could really hurt your website. So let's now talk about being kicked out of your ad network or your affiliate network, which is point number 8. Luckily this doesn't happen often and you really just need to mess up in order for this to happen, but if it does happen, it can be really detrimental. When I was first starting out, I had my website mainly monetized with Amazon Associates, and Amazon Associates has a rule where you cannot name the price of an item within your link. I did this because I didn't know any better, and eventually Amazon kicked me out of their program for this. Now, I was just in the beginning stages, so I didn't lose out on anything, but just keep in mind that if you have an established website, say maybe a 3 or 4 year old website that gets thousands of visitors every day, it can be really hurtful and impactful if Amazon or any other affiliate network kicks you out. Now, being kicked out, you really need to mess up and go against the terms of service or whatever, but sometimes an ad network just ceases to exist. For example, Airbnb was one of the most popular affiliate networks for many of the travel blogs, but Airbnb decided that they no longer want an affiliate program. So Airbnb affiliate program is being deleted. And if you're a travel blogger and your main source of revenue is your Airbnb commissions, you're in a very tough spot now. So what I recommend for this is always have a backup plan. If your main plan is Airbnb, you're now suddenly no longer have your affiliate network. And if you don't have a backup plan, you're losing a lot of cash because your links just point to nothing. So even though your backup plan might not be as profitable as your first option, you will at least make some money instead of just losing out on everything. Now moving on to number 9, which is affiliate networks cutting their commissions. Now this is something that happened pretty recently, I believe a year ago in March of 2020, Amazon decided to slash their commissions. So we saw a commission cut of about 52% across the board, so nearly all commissions were cut down by half. And there really just is nothing you can do about this. If Amazon decides that they want their commissions to be gone or to be 1% across the board or whatever they want, they can do that, and there's nothing you or I can do about it. Now, when Amazon did this in 2020, it was a really shitty situation. The whole world was going into lockdown, people were losing their jobs. There just was a lot of turmoil around the world. So Amazon decided that this would be the best time to cut people's paycheck in half. I still don't get it, and it's a really shitty move on their part. But it can happen, and this just shows that even though times are bad, it can still happen. Now lastly, I wanted to talk about your hosting company going down. And we briefly talked about your site crashing, but what if your host goes down? So your host is the company that makes sure your website is online and on the air. And if this company crashes or their server goes down, your website is no longer reachable. Now luckily this doesn't happen that often, but when it does, you're basically in the worst situation possible. So whereas you can usually just load up a backup on your host and have your site up and running again, you no longer have that option because your host is down. There's nothing to back up to. Luckily, most downtimes with hosting companies are really short, if they happen at all. And that's for the bigger companies. But some people are partnered with smaller hosting companies, and sometimes their downtime can be a few weeks. Now, if your site is the one that's earning all your money, you don't want your site to be down a few weeks. That's just not an option. So what you can do here is swap to another hosting plan and have your website hosted with a different company. So those are 10 things that can happen to your website that can have a really negative impact on it. Some of these are controlled by you, and some of these are outside factors that you really just have to prepare for. Now, luckily, most of these things aren't as common as a lot of people believe them to be, but they can happen. And once they do, make sure that you are prepared and you know what to do next. But that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!